Just kidding, Eastside Youth. How you guys doing? Hopefully you are doing well, and yeah, stay off the internet today. I wanted to give you guys a little update. I mentioned Sunday evening that we were looking at doing an event this next week. We're going to be doing a pumpkin smash on Sunday. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. I'm thinking we're going to get together around 3, so an hour earlier than youth group usually starts. And we've got some pumpkins. We'll be getting a few more, and we'll just give everybody an opportunity to smash a pumpkin, hit it with something, and just have a good time. And then we will flow right into regular youth group from there. So this Sunday, instead of youth group starting at 4, it's going to start an hour earlier at 3. So that's the only change as far as how that goes. Otherwise, regular youth group this week. We're looking forward to seeing you. This previous week, if you were here, we talked about kind of Jesus. Talked about Jesus being greater than Aaron. But we talked about that, and it was kind of a recap and a part 2 from last week, where we talked about Jesus, or 2 weeks ago, where Jesus is greater than the priesthood. And one of the things, if you're here, I drew this big weird thing on the whiteboard, and it was kind of like where you have the thing and all the arrows are going all over the place, and eventually it starts to get so jumbled that if you look at it after the fact, you go, what is going on? But essentially the breakdown is this: Jesus is better than Aaron because Aaron's priesthood comes from Levi. And way back in the beginning of Genesis, when Abraham paid tribute and paid honor to the priest Melchizedek, in doing so, Abraham, whose son was Isaac, whose son was Jacob, who is Israel, whose son was Levi, who later the priesthood would come from, in doing that, Levi and the priesthood of Aaron and all of these other priests paid honor and tribute to Melchizedek through their grandfather or great grandfather Abraham. And so because of that, the author is trying to get this idea that not only is Jesus a greater high priest, but the origin of his priesthood is greater than Aaron's, because Aaron's priesthood paid tribute to the priesthood that Jesus is tied to, which we find in the book of Psalms and in Hebrews, is better than that, because throughout the way that they track lineage and honor is Abraham paid honor to him, and so the systems that come from Abraham also do as well. Also, Jesus is a never-ending priest, where Aaron died, and eventually his kids took over, and eventually they died and their kids took over, and so on and so forth down throughout history. The author says Jesus' priesthood does not end. Jesus died, but he came back, and in doing so, he is a better priest and is able to bring us into the presence of God for all time. And so Jesus is better than Aaron. That's what we looked at this last week. So we're going to just continue in the book of Hebrews, and keep plugging along. Jesus is a cool dude, and we need to learn more about it. But for now, we're going to jump ahead in where we're at in Hebrews, back to the Hall of Faith in Hebrews chapter 11. And we are in verse 7 this week, and it says, "By faith, Noah, being warned by God concerning events yet unseen, in reverent fear constructed an ark for the saving of his household. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of the righteousness that comes by faith." So our next person, we had Abel, and then we had Enoch, and now we're talking about Noah. And we probably know the story. God tells Noah to build a big boat. Noah builds big boat. God sends big rain, and flood happens. But this kind of keys in on something about this interaction and this exchange between Noah and God prior to that. And essentially, it's God showing up, and if you want to read this, it's in Genesis 6, 7, 8, 9, it has that story spread across there. But God shows up and he tells Noah, hey, I'm gonna, humanity has become corrupt to the point where all they're doing all the time is taking advantage of each other, sinning against one another, doing whatever they want, whenever they want, and it's completely toxic. Like, we have to change something about this. But prior to that, we're told that Noah found favor in God's eyes. And this indicates to us, Hebrews 11 indicates that favor that Noah finds is faith. He had faith in God, and he responded through his actions. So we've been talking about, like, well, faith, what does faith look like? For each of these people so far, faith is shown in the things that they do in response to their belief in God. So Noah has faith in God, and God shows up and says, hey, Noah, I know you've probably not really seen it rain yet, and if you have, it's probably a little bit. I'm going to make it rain so much that, like, everything is going underwater. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. I have never seen something like that. Like, I've seen a flood before, but nothing that, like, covered all the stuff I could see. The biggest flood that I've had to deal with is when I was in high school. I was helping out with this VBS program, and every year the valley in between, like, where I went to youth group and where I lived would flood. And I was at youth group, or at VBS helping out, and I get a call from, I think it was my dad, and he said, like, you need to head out. Like, the valley is flooding. And I had to drive across more than a couple feet of water and you go real slow, and you just kind of watch the water do this thing as you drive through it as slowly as you can. And looking back, it was incredibly stupid, because, like, if that water would have been moving, it would have washed my car right off. But that's, like, the biggest water that I've had to deal with as far as a flood goes. This is 1,000 times bigger. Covered everything they could see. Noah had never seen that. I've never seen that. And yet God says, take on this super big building project. Build a huge boat. I don't know how to build a boat either. God, like, gives Noah the knowledge and the instruction to build the boat. But God never went, okay, Noah, you have to do this. He said, the rain's coming. Here's the instructions to build a boat. You got this much time. And Noah did it. And that he did it, that is an indication, and Hebrews says that that is his righteousness. By this he condemned the world and became an heir of righteousness that comes by faith. So by showing his faith and doing this thing of righteousness, he avoided that. And in doing so, the author says, like, he brought condemnation to the world. So what it is the rest of the world looked on while Noah did this thing. He built this boat. And Noah's faith was in response to his understanding, like, things are bad and I need to do something about it. God has told me what I need to do, and I need to do it. And when we start talking about the person of Jesus, we have this similar experience of God has revealed to us a thing about Jesus. It also reveals that we have a problem. We have sin that needs to be dealt with. And so in Peter, it relates, like, the work of Jesus to, like, this work of Noah in delivering the people on the ark. And it was just Noah's family. But it's this idea that, like, we know that we have a problem, and we know the solution, according to God's word, is Jesus. And so if we look at that and we say, I'm not getting on the boat, then it's this idea that we have chosen the result. And so the author of Hebrews is laying it out, like, get on the boat. Because remember, all of Hebrews is trying to show, like, Jesus is greater than all this stuff. And so when we get here, it's like, that was who they had faith in, this God who came in the fullness and in the fulfillment of Jesus. So put your faith in him. That's the heart of how the author takes the story of Noah and pulls it over into the book of Hebrews and says, okay, we need to have faith and respond to the things that God has told us and revealed. So, Noah had faith, and in response, he built a big boat. And because he did so, he saved himself and his family, and all the animals that couldn't swim or fly for that long. So, awesome story. Again, it's one that we've heard before, but the author of Hebrews starts talking about faith. Noah had faith, and that faith led him to respond and do something in righteousness on behalf of his faith in God. It produced a righteousness in him. That is Noah in Hebrews 11 in the Hall of Faith. Next week we're going to continue and we're going to get to Abraham at long last. So we'll see you guys next week. See you Sunday for the Pumpkin Smash and youth group. Bring a friend, tell people it's going to be a good time, and happy November. It's hard to believe that we're in the final couple months here. Stay safe, guys. We love you. We'll see you soon. Bye.